Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Mike and this is Build and Tinker, and I've literally just finished filming the Ford Falcon XBGT issues 43 to 46, and we're going to move on really quickly to issues 47 to 50. There's a bit of a delay with this model, which is why I'm doing two videos back to back. It wasn't Hachette's fault, it was actually PayPal who decided to just cancel my recurring payment. And we still don't know why, but we've caught up with the parts and therefore I'm going to catch up with the video. So let's get going. Issue 47 and 48 are actually very similar to the last two issues that we did in the last video, issues 45 and 46, in that we are making the exhaust and we're going to fit it to the car. In the last one we did the right-hand exhaust, and this one we're doing the left, but the principle's exactly the same. We start by bringing the two halves together. One goes through the other, just like so. And with a silver screw, we can bring those together. So one screw goes in the middle here, and then there's two more that go just a bit further down into these holes here. And that's literally all we are doing on this issue. So let's move on to issue 48. And just as we did previously, we are going to assemble the other part of the exhaust. We start with this side of the muffler and we put onto it the piece of exhaust tail that we've just assembled. We then use a chrome screw to hold those together. And it just goes through this tab here and holds that in. The other half of the exhaust then fits over like so. Just drops on to the posts as you'd expect. There's two screws to go into this muffler here. And then one goes into this hole at the end of the pipe. And with this assembled, we now need to put it onto the chassis. Just as before, I've got the chassis just propped up on some foam here to keep the fuel tank filler from resting on the desk. And exactly the same as the other side of the car, the exhaust rests into these holes here. There's two here and a run of holes going towards the front of the car. And there are posts on the opposite side, on the opposite piece, and it literally just drops into place. It really couldn't be simpler. We now need to hold that in place though while we attach the screws. You have the option, of course, to simply put the car on its side. No, you don't, because it would rest on those exhausts. So let's put it on its wheels where it's safest, and I'll keep one hand underneath to hold the part in place. Of course, it's a little harder to do all of this whilst you're trying to get it positioned nicely for filming, but we only need to get one screw in, and it will hold the entire exhaust up. There we go. And now I can let go of the car and it all becomes a little easier. So there's 5 screws in total, 2 here on the ends where the tail comes out. And then we've got 1, 2, and third one is actually in those cables. So we're going to have to fish around in the cables to get that one in. So the final screw is just here, and there are cables in the way, so we just need to make sure we're careful not to damage them in the process. There we go, with the cable pulled to one side, becomes a little easier. So here we have the left-hand side exhaust fitted to the car, and we now have both sides done. So they stick out a bit, and they are plastic. So we do need to be careful not to snap these off while we are working on the rest of the car. Previously, it's been quite helpful to be able to lean the car on its side while we were doing things. Well, that's probably not going to be so easy now with these sticking out, and we can't lay it on its back so easy with this sticking out. So this is where pieces of foam like this that you can stack up are very useful. I've also cut some into like wedge shapes, which are quite useful. So have something like that kicking around that you can use to protect your model, because it's quite heartbreaking if you flip something over and snap something off. I've done it enough times now. I know how it feels, but If you do that, most things can be repaired with a bit of glue and tears. So that's the end of this part of the assembly. So we're now going to go on to issue 49. So these are all the parts that we get for issue 49, and we are starting to put together parts of the steering mechanism. So we have this large piece here is part of the steering rack. They call it part A. We have another part of the rack here, which is part C. This one's metal and it's got some gears on it, so that's obviously the rack part of the rack and pinion. We've got some tie rods and center arm plus some screws. So we're going to take this center arm, which is a plastic piece with a little collar here, and then we take this rod, which is the only one that has a curve in it, and it has a post sticking out the top here. We're going to take the flanged part of this and push it over like that. And with this piece assembled like so, we can take the DS04 screw, which is a screw with a flanged head, and we put that inside the recess here. You want to make sure that's screwed down nice and tight, and even when it is, this piece will move, which is deliberate. We're then going to take the straight tie rod, which also has a flanged end just here, and that is going to go into the shorter end of this tie rod, but on the opposite side. So it's going to go on the opposite side of the piece we just fitted, and you'll notice there is a keyway. Yeah, so that's going to line up with the keyway here, so it won't rotate. Again, we now turn that back over so we can get to the screw hole, and we're going to put DS04 in there. Then we're going to take this rack part of the rack and pinion, and we're going to attach that to this as well. So the orientation is important. So I'm going to spin this round so that I've got this piece here, that center pole, that's facing upwards. I've got the short end and our straight tie rod. I've then got our rack and pinion piece, which again has a flanged end. That is going to go through, okay, so it's going to go and sit through like that. Okay, which should mean our gears are facing me. And then our final DS04 screw goes into this screw hole. So that's our final assembly with those pieces like that. We've now got to get this and fit it to the car. So I'm going to need the car on the bench upside down. So the orientation is quite important. So we're looking at this orientation. I've got the rack on this side and the teeth are facing downwards. Then I've got this center piece here. I don't think that matters where it's going to be right now because it's going to flop around a little bit. And for the moment, we're just going to sit it in this gap here. What you'll see is these gears, they drop into a recess in this part of the chassis. I think that's where the pinion is going to go from the steering column. Take the one final piece that we haven't used yet, and this inserts into here. And it's going to lay in this direction, and it's going to sit over this chassis rail just here. It kind of drops actually quite well into position over this post and this one. So far, even though we've not put any screws in, it seems to be holding in the right place. For now, the only screws we're going to put in are in those two holes there. They're called DS02. And that's those two screwed in. So we now have our steering mechanism, and it should move freely like this. So you should be able to move that. This piston is going to move in and out. And importantly, this rack gearing here is going to move left and right above the opening where the pinion is going to go. The rest of it's flopping around a bit, so we just need to be careful of that because at the moment there's no other screws to hold any of those pieces down. So we just need to be careful that doesn't move around. But we'll see what we get in the next issue because that's the end of issue 49. So we'll move on to issue 50. So these are the parts for issue 50. And you can see this again, it's part of the front sway bar assembly. And I'm thinking that that may end up holding some of the other parts down. Not quite sure what these parts are. There's two of them and they're on a sprue. It looks like we're going to have to separate them off. There is a stamp, L and R. stamped on the sprue, not on the part. So don't separate them until you are ready to fit them. Otherwise you may forget which is which. So as before, we are chassis on the bench upside down. So the first step is to fit this sway bar here. It's one piece and it's plastic. And you can see from the shape here that it drops into this area of the chassis. It goes this way up, so you should be able to see these little bolt holes. And it's going to present a couple of little screw holes through the holes in the frame here. Now they provided us with 2 hinge pins, which we need to drive through the chassis and through the part in this direction. So these are the hinge pins, and you may be able to see that one end is smooth and one end has knurled. So you want the smooth end to go in first, and we are putting them in from the outside. Just getting these lined up is not 100% straightforward, but just be patient and wiggle things until it lines up. So we've got it through the outer skin and through the inner part, and we just need to find that inner hole on the other side of the frame. Okay, so that's the first pin in, and I ended up having to use some needle nose pliers to squeeze that in. The principle of the fit is very simple. You're driving a pin through some holes. However, lining those holes up is the tricky part, whilst also giving it enough force to get the knurled part of the pin in. So you need the pliers, but it's the lining it up that's quite complicated. As you can see, I've kind of nicked parts of the frame. I'm not too bothered, you're never going to see it again. But I've used a similar system on other models that was a little bit easier. It's not the end of the world, but I'll just get the second one done. It's literally the exact same process on the other side here. Okay, and that's the other side done. It went in a little bit easier, fought me less, and therefore I managed to do it without scratching it up. So with those pins installed, we're now ready to screw the other part of this down. The couple of PS11 screws for that, and they go in from the top of the car. So we need to get the car flipped over, back onto its wheels. And in this part of the frame here at the front, you'll see we now have these screw holes, these screw posts that we can connect to. A couple of wires in the way. And we'll just hold the sway bar up and put these screws in here. And again, we have to flip the car upside down. And now we're going to take these pieces that we had earlier that are on this sprue, and again, they are labelled L and R. Now with the car upside down, of course, remember that you might get your left and right mixed up. So we're going to start with left. We'll leave the right hand one on the sprue. The left of the car is this side here, nearest to me. And what we need to do with this piece is fit it over the top of this bar here. It's hard to tell, but there are a couple of little holes either side of this fitting. And on this clamp part here, we have a post on one side and a screw post on the other. So the holes, one is small, that's for the post, and the larger one is for the screw post. So we need to make sure we get this the correct way around. It just fits over like so. And of course it needs screwing in from the other side, which means flipping the car back over. Let's get our screw ready first. We need a PS12, which is a very, very small screw. And with the screwdriver loaded up, I'm just going to flip the car over. I'm going to have to hold this piece in place with my finger while we screw it in from the top. Again, it's very thin plastic, so don't over tighten it. So then we fit the second piece in from the underside. Hold it with our thumb while we flip the car back over again. And then put the final screw in place. So that's all of those screws installed. A little bit fiddly. You kind of need 4 hands at least. So that's the end of issue 50 and the end of today's video. So I hope you enjoyed it, and please remember to click that like button if you did, and click subscribe if you haven't already. The vast majority of my viewers are not subscribed, so it'd be really good to get those numbers up. Please leave a comment below if you've got any questions, or let us know how you're getting on with your build. In the meantime, I look forward to seeing you next time, so take care.